Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter. I welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 NHL video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 NHL All-Star Game moments that have happened. Wearing the Ace Toronto Maple Leafs retro jersey from well, this is a knockoff from the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2009 when I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame 17 years ago. Yeah, I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2009. Can you believe it? 17 years ago. And I still have this. I love this jersey and all that with everything I got. Going to the Hockey Hall of Fame and all that. It is actually imperative because in 1934, the first NHL All-Star game happened because Ace Bailey in 1933 was whacked by Eddie Shore, of the Boston Bruins because he mistook Bailey for someone who actually hit him, and it was Red Horner. So to raise money for Ace Bailey's injuries and all that, they had a tribute game. They had the Toronto Maple Leafs wearing the Ace jerseys, as you see here, taking on the NHL All Stars. Eddie Shore and Ace Bailey actually shook hands, and it was just shocking to a lot of people. I wish this was in the top 10, but that's just an origin story. So we're going to be looking at 10 great moments. Well, you know what? Why don't I just make it number 10? The origins of the NHL All Star game. So anyway, it was December 1933 when the Leafs were in Boston to take on the Bruins. Eddie Shore was attacked by Red Horner, and then thinking he saw a Red Horner, he whacked him in the head. But it was Ace Bailey, the powerful center for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He fell on the ice, his head cracked, and everyone thought he was dead. Priests were getting lefts, rights. Bailey's father was stopped before he could go after Eddie Shore. Shore was given a massive suspension. So to raise money for Ace Bailey's injuries and all that, they decided to have an All-Star game between the Toronto Maple Leafs players and the rest of the league, the other NHL players having a thing. And then came the big time handshake between Ace Bailey and Eddie Shore. They kind of retired Ace Bailey's number 6, the Leafs did in a sense, but it was actually taken out of circulation for Ron Ellis. But anyway, yeah, that was the first All-Star game and all that. The All-Star games before the 1950s were actually just exhibition fundraisers and all that. One was in 1937 when they actually had a competition between the two Montreal teams, like the Canadiens and the Bruins, pooled their players together to face the other NHL teams in the Howie Moran's Memorial Game, and they even had one for Babe Siebert, who was supposed to be coach of the Habs but died drowning in 1939. And there's in Plattsville, Ontario, where I'm from. Number 9 is the skills competition hat of Alex Ovechkin in 2009. When the All-Star game headed to Montreal in 2009, Alex Ovechkin was trying to make everyone warm up to him and all that. So during the breakaway challenge, where you were allowed to use props, Ovechkin would wear a borrowed cowboy hat and sunglasses while taking his shot, and everyone laughed it off. Kind of cool, don't you think? Number 8 is Ray Bourque at the skills competition. Ray Bourque was a pretty good shooter and all that. One of the best defensemen of all time, the highest scoring defenseman of all time. However, his legacy was in the shooting accuracy. 4 targets would be at each corner of the net, and you had to shoot them as fast as you can. Bourque went 4 for 4, meaning he missed none of them in 93 and 96 when Boston hosted the All-Star game and Ray Bourque was still with the Bruins. So Ray Bourque did his job, and it was accuracy. He would do well in All-Star game weekend. And that'll be that. Number 7 is Mike Gardner's 4-goal game 1993. Now, the 1993 All-Star game was huge. This was the first time that Gary Bettman was in charge of the NHL during the All-Star game. It used to always be the president, and then now it's the commissioner. And Gary Bettman talked about how big hockey was and all that, making all the right noises. So he officiated over the 93 All-Star game between the Wales and the Campbell Conference. Campbell, which is now the West, as we call it, and the Wales to be in the East. However, one massive thing happened in 1993. The score was 16-6, one of the highest scoring All-Star games of all time. But what's even more big was Mike Gardner, who was actually a injury replacement for Adam Graves, I think it was. Gardner was a replacement for somebody, or was it for Leach? Well, Mike Gardner was a New York Rangers replacement, and Gardner got into the game and whacked 4 goals past Campbell goaltending. And the worst part was I think the second or the third goal Gardner scored was the one that went like Ed Belfour went to play the puck and it went right between his legs, and Gardner easily tapped it in and made Belfour eat crow. Yeah, Mike Gardner did his job, scoring 4 goals in that All Star game. 16-6, it was wild. It was also the one that Mario Lemieux got an All Star jersey. He couldn't play in the All Star game because of his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, other than his radiation treatments. But still, Montreal gave him a massive standing ovation. All that. Number 6 is Olin Nolan's hat trick, 1997. This doesn't seem to be a fantastic moment, but I mean, Olin Nolan was playing in the All Star game. San Jose was supposed to host the '95 All Star game, but that was canceled because of the strike that ruined half the year. San Jose got a chance in '97 to host the All Star game for the San Francisco area, and Olin Nolan played for the Sharks. He put up a hat trick. His third goal was famous because he actually got the puck kind of on a breakaway, pointed towards Dominic Hasek and the net, and posted it over Hasek. And it was a massive it was a called shot. A lot of people were like, did he really call his shot when he scored his third goal? It looked like it. He did. So yeah, that was an amazing time to be an NHL player. Number 5 is Mario Lemieux at the 1990 All-Star game. So the 1990 All-Star game was in Pittsburgh, and Lemieux would be wowing the crowd. I know I could also say Finn Stamkos deserves to be in the top 10 because of his 4 goal maps in 1991 in Chicago. And legendarily, it should have been the 19. I wish that I put the 1991 All Star Game in here because I remember then. Now I remember with the Chicago Stadium going bonkers over Wayne Messmer's national anthem thing, and the fans were cheering over the anthem. Of course, this was with the Iraq War, no, the Gulf War problems. But yeah, 1990 was big for Lemieux and them. He scored 4 goals on Campbell goaltending. But what was even more impressive was that this actually was a landmark for US TV. Because, strange as it sounds, nowadays, of course, we all know we have NHL games on ABC from time to time. But did you know that the 1990 All Star Game, which was broadcast by NBC, and you don't have Marv Albert behind the mic, it was the first time since the 1980 Stanley Cup Game 6, the famous Bob Nystrom goal, that an American over-the-air TV network had NHL hockey. So there were the big 3 at the time. You had ABC, NBC, and CBS. CBS broadcast Game 6 of the 1980 Stanley Cup Finals as kind of a Sports Saturday showpiece, and Dan Kelly was on the call. That was the last time any of the major networks hosted an NHL game over network TV till 1990, when NBC did the All-Star game and got some push through to keep doing more games and all that. ABC would do some NHL playoff games in 1993. But the fact is that, yeah, it showed how much hockey was diluted from the market and how potentially John Sigler ruined American TV to do with the NHL. Bet you didn't know that. Number 4 is the 1980 All-Star Game of Gordie Howe. The last of Gordie Howe's career, the first of Wayne Gretzky's career. So Gordie Howe at age 51 shocked everyone. Well, he came back to the NHL after the WHA folded and all that. And then teams were merged. He was on the Whalers. He played the 1980 season for the Whalers, and Wayne Gretzky played his first season with Edmonton. Hartford and Edmonton would be on different sides of the conferences and all that. Gordie Howe would take to the ice for his 23rd and final All-Star appearance. Ironically enough, in Detroit, the place where he made himself famous in the NHL, at the new Joe Louis Arena. People forget that Detroit actually opened up the Joe Louis Arena in late December 1979, and that was not one of the original 6 arenas. That was the Olympia in Detroit. But yeah, Gordie Howe took to the ice for the All-Star game, picked up an assist on a Real Cluche goal from the Nordiques. And this was Gretzky's first All-Star game. It was amazing. Number 3 is John Scott winning MVP in 2016. So in 2016, the NHL decided to have what they call division all-star teams. That you would have each division would have a six player team and all that, one player per team and all that to make things happen. However, the fans were devoted, and John Scott um, was there and all that. John Scott got the votes. The voters wanted John Scott, so they decided. But Gary Bettman did not want an enforcer in the NHL game, so they forced Nashville to trade him to Montreal's organization to make sure he didn't make the All Star game. Unfortunately, though, the fans got pissed off and forced Bettman to allow John Scott onto the NHL All Star thing, probably hoping that John Scott would embarrass himself. But he did. He scored twice. He was the All Star Game MVP, and Gary Bettman would be eating a lot of crow, and hopefully not for the last time. Well, of course, I'm a little bit bitter at Gary Bettman. Don't ask me why. Okay, well, let's just say number 2 is Chicago Stadium 1991. It wasn't for Vince Dompouz's 4 goals. It was the fact that, um, you know, the Gulf War was on. The NHL wasn't sure if they wanted to broadcast the game and all that. NBC had that game. I think it was before the AFC title game or something. I don't know what their schedule was like. No, I think it was on a Sunday. But yeah, the 1991 All-Star game in Chicago was big because this was the first All-Star game that had the Heroes of Hockey, aka the Legends, play an alumni game and all that. So anyway, yeah, 1991 was huge because of the Gulf War. Wayne Messmer tried to sing the national anthem in Chicago, but the fans gave a massive ovation about the American anthem at Chicago Stadium, and it was just spine tingling if you watched the game on TSN or NBC. And finally, number 1 is Wayne Gretzky's 4-goal game in 1983. Gretzky was a star player. Everyone knows about his 92 goals in 1982, or should know. But Wayne Gretzky was a better player in the All-Star game in 1983. The 83 All-Star game, it was actually supposed to be John Garrett, who passed away recently, his All-Star game moment. It was supposed to be Richard Brodeur in the nets for the Campbell Conference, but he couldn't compete. And since no other Vancouver player was around, they switched goalies. So John Garrett, the backup to King Richard, would be in net for the Campbell Conference. And he stymied everyone. Yeah, he stymied everybody in the Wales Conference. And he was close to getting the car. But Wayne Gretzky put up not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 goals off of Pelle Lindbergh. And almost every goal was just a death blow to John Garrett because he wasn't going to get that automobile. So Gretzky's 4 goals in one period wowed a lot of people and pissed off the Garrett family, I bet. So anyway, that's it. All Stars for Life. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.